5:42 a.m., eastern Ukraine. The sky was still dark. The ground was quiet. Then a deep rumble rolled across the horizon. Moments later, the silence broke. U.S. bombers had entered hostile airspace. Their mission was simple but deadly: strike 5 Russian strongholds before dawn. Within minutes, the calm turned to fire. Explosions lit the horizon. Commanders whispered the words, "Impact confirmed." This was not just another mission. It was retaliation. It was history in motion. Stay till the end, because what followed changed everything. Like this video, subscribe, and press the bell icon for more real war breakdowns every week. The events that led to this strike did not happen overnight. For months, tension between the United States and Russia had been building quietly, almost invisibly. It began with a series of small clashes in Eastern Europe, drone incidents, cyber intrusions, and unclaimed airspace violations. Intelligence analysts on both sides knew what was happening. The peace was cracking. By early spring, satellite photos revealed something alarming. Russian forces were digging in across 5 separate sites near the occupied border. Each location looked ordinary at first. Clusters of vehicles, a few radar towers, defensive bunkers. But American analysts saw the pattern. They were not simple camps. They were strongholds. Heavily fortified positions with anti-aircraft launchers, long-range artillery, and command centers buried deep underground. These strongholds were meant to send a message. They were built for endurance, not defense. Russia was preparing to hold ground, not just patrol it. Inside the Pentagon, concern grew. Every new satellite image showed more troop movement, more armor, and more missile placements. The question was no longer if something would happen, but when. The United States issued several warnings through diplomatic channels. Statements were made. Meetings were held in Geneva, Brussels, and Ankara. Yet nothing changed. Russian units stayed in position. Intelligence intercepts suggested they were preparing an operation that could threaten NATO territory within weeks. By the end of that week, surveillance drones confirmed it. Mobile missile systems were being positioned dangerously close to U.S. allied forces. The White House met with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The National Security Council reviewed every piece of data. At 22 hours, the president signed an emergency order, the green light for Operation Iron Dawn. The objective was clear: destroy 5 fortified Russian positions before they could launch any attack. The mission had to be fast, precise, and untraceable until impact. The operation was classified as a strategic retaliation, not an act of war. Timing was everything. The Pentagon scheduled the strike for the early morning hours, before sunrise, when radar coverage was weakest and human alertness was lowest. Inside the Strategic Command Center, the mood was silent but focused. No one spoke unless necessary. Dozens of screens tracked weather patterns, wind speeds, and satellite feeds. Pilots of the B-2 Spirit stealth bombers were already briefed. Each bomber was assigned multiple GPS coordinates, corresponding to Russian stronghold bunkers. The B-1 Lancers were prepared for secondary strikes in case any targets survived the first wave. From an airbase in the Mediterranean, a U.S. Navy carrier strike group moved into position. 2 destroyers, the USS Roosevelt and the USS Higgins, were equipped with Tomahawk Block V missiles. Their launchers were loaded, coordinates locked in. Overhead, RQ-4 Global Hawk drones scanned the region continuously, feeding real-time data back to the strike teams. As the operation countdown began, time slowed. Pilots performed final system checks. Communications officers confirmed encrypted channels. The aircrew sat quietly inside the bombers, their faces lit by soft green displays. At 04:00 hours, the first engines roared to life. The B-2s lifted off silently, climbing into the night sky, invisible to radar. At 05:00 hours, command issued the final call. Iron Dawn is a go. The bombers approached their designated zones at subsonic speed, flying under 30,000 feet to avoid detection. Each carried a mix of JDAMs, precision-guided bombs designed to hit within 3 meters of a target. The U.S. Navy destroyers held their fire until the bombers reached strike range. The plan depended on precision. There was no room for error. Every second was measured, every flight path calculated. In total, over 600 personnel were involved in the mission: pilots, engineers, analysts, and command officers. At 05:41 a.m., a signal was sent from U.S. Strategic Command: weapons free. Seconds later, 5 bombers released their payloads. In the same moment, Tomahawk missiles launched from the Black Sea, streaking through the night sky. No one spoke in the control room, just silence. The radar screens filled with moving dots. The countdown to impact began. 10 seconds, 5 seconds, Then, impact. 5 Russian strongholds vanished almost instantly. The earth trembled. Fire and smoke rose hundreds of feet high. Within minutes, communications from those sites went dark. For the first time in months, the border zone went silent. It was over in less than 7 minutes. The world had no idea what had just happened. But inside the Pentagon, commanders already knew. The strike was clean. The retaliation was complete. And the message, unmistakable. This was not about war. This was about warning. It was the calm before the storm. A storm that was only beginning to form. 05:42 a.m. Impact confirmed. The words echoed through the operations center. The first wave of US B-2 Spirits had dropped their payloads with near-perfect precision. Each stronghold was struck within seconds of the other. The night sky lit up like dawn, but this light came from fire, not the sun. The first target, a Russian command outpost dug into a hillside, was hit by 2 GBU-31 dams. The bombs penetrated through concrete and detonated underground. The shockwave ripped through tunnels and bunkers, silencing every signal. At the same time, Tomahawk missiles from the Black Sea reached their marks. They flew low over the terrain, invisible to radar, before slamming into armored vehicle bays and ammunition depots. Inside the Russian strongholds, confusion turned to panic. Soldiers scrambled to power up air defenses, but it was too late. The radar screens flickered, jammed by American electronic countermeasures. S-400 launchers never got a lock. Commanders shouted orders through failing comms, but static was all they heard. Within 2 minutes, 4 of the 5 sites were burning. At 05:44 a.m., the second wave arrived. 2 B-1B Lancers followed the B-2s, dropping smaller precision bombs to destroy what was left. Radar arrays, surface-to-air batteries, and communication trucks. A single strike hit a fuel depot, igniting a chain of explosions that tore through an entire compound. The temperature at the impact zone exceeded 2,000 degrees Celsius. Nothing could survive that heat. U.S. surveillance drones watched everything from above. The feed showed expanding craters, collapsing bunkers, and empty roads. No return fire, no counterattack, only smoke. Analysts in Washington watched the same feed in silence. One of them whispered, 5 minutes, that's all it took. At 05:46 a.m., Russian early warning systems finally registered the full scale of the attack. Dozens of emergency signals flashed across their defense network. Fighter jets scrambled from nearby bases, but the U.S. bombers were already gone, slipping out under radar cover. The Tomahawk missiles had completed their runs. The strike was surgical. No wasted shots, no missed targets. Reports came in from local observers near the border. They described the ground shaking, windows breaking miles away, and the horizon glowing red. Some thought it was an earthquake. Others said it looked like the sunrise had caught fire. By 06 a.m., Russian media began releasing fragmented reports of unexplained explosions in occupied zones. State channels went off air for several minutes. No one could confirm the cause. But U.S. intelligence knew the mission had achieved full success. All 5 targets neutralized. In the Pentagon's command room, there was no celebration, only steady breathing and quiet voices confirming data. One officer read the line that ended the operation. Targets 1 through 5, neutralized. Collateral damage, minimal. The cost of the strike was enormous in planning, but minimal in blood. No American casualties, no planes lost. The total operation time, from first takeoff to return, was just under 3 hours. Behind the statistics lay the human reality. Inside those strongholds were over 300 Russian personnel. Most never made it out. The precision of the bombs left no chance for retreat. It was not chaos, it was execution. Clean, clinical, decisive. As the bombers headed home, refueled mid-air, U.S. Navy destroyers stood down. Drones continued to monitor the smoking craters for hours. The operation name, Iron Dawn, was fitting. It was a dawn that reshaped the map of that region. News of the strike spread slowly, then all at once. By midday, global networks were running headlines. Unidentified airstrike destroys Russian military sites. Moscow called it an act of aggression. Washington said nothing. Silence was the official answer, the most powerful message of all. The incident was more than a battle. It was a demonstration of technology, timing, and total control. 5 strongholds erased in 7 minutes. No one saw it coming, and no one could deny what followed next. The world realizing that the U.S. could strike anywhere, anytime, and finish the job before the enemy even woke up. The strike was not only about power, it was about precision and technology that made it possible. Behind every explosion was a system built to work in silence and strike with perfection. The main force came from the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. Designed for deep penetration missions, the B-2 can fly more than 6,000 miles without refueling and carry up to 40,000 pounds of weapons. Its radar-absorbing surface makes it nearly invisible to enemy systems. During Operation Iron Dawn, these aircraft flew at altitudes that kept them below radar detection while maintaining a communication link with U.S. command satellites. Each B-2 carried a mix of GPS-guided JDAMs, Joint Direct Attack munitions. These are 2,000-pound bombs that use satellite navigation to hit within a few meters of their target. Even in poor weather or electronic interference, they can adjust in flight and still strike with precision. The bombs used during the mission were the GBU-31 variants, designed to pierce hardened concrete bunkers before exploding. Alongside the B-2s, the B-1B Lancer bombers added speed and volume. The B-1 is known as the Bone among pilots, a shortened form of B-1. It can fly at speeds over Mach 1.2 and carry more ordnance than any other bomber in the U.S. fleet, over 75,000 pounds of munitions. During the strike, the Lancers were used to deliver smaller quick-release bombs to ensure that any surviving equipment was completely destroyed. Supporting the air mission were the Navy's assets, the USS Roosevelt and USS Higgins. Both are Arleigh Burke-class destroyers armed with Tomahawk Block V cruise missiles. These missiles are capable of traveling nearly 1,000 miles and are guided by advanced terrain mapping systems. They fly low, hugging the ground to stay invisible to radar, then climb and dive into the target at supersonic speed. The margin of error is less than 3 meters. Before launch, every missile's path was simulated hundreds of times by computers at U.S. Strategic Command. Factors like wind speed, radar coverage, and even thermal shifts in the atmosphere were accounted for. Each Tomahawk launched during Iron Dawn had a pre-programmed flight path designed to confuse Russian tracking systems. The missiles came in from multiple angles, giving the appearance of several simultaneous attacks. But technology alone was not enough. Timing made the difference. The strike happened before sunrise for a reason. At dawn, ground temperatures are low, which makes radar returns weaker. The cold air creates a stable environment for bomb guidance and minimizes visual detection from the ground. For stealth operations, this window, between 4:30 and 6 a.m., is known as gray hour. It's the perfect moment to attack when human reaction and radar efficiency are at their lowest. Electronic warfare also played a key role. U.S. aircraft deployed ECM pods, electronic countermeasure systems that jammed Russian radar and communication channels. This prevented air defense units from locking onto incoming targets. Signals were distorted and radar images appeared scrambled, showing false readings and phantom aircraft. To Russian operators, the sky looked chaotic, with too many blips to track. Overhead, RQ-4 Global Hawk drones provided continuous surveillance. Each drone stayed at 60,000 feet, out of reach of enemy missiles, streaming live video to command centers. MQ-9 Reaper drones joined in to confirm visual damage assessments minutes after impact. The entire battlefield was monitored in real time from hundreds of miles away. Even refueling was a precision act. KC-135 Stratotankers operated in preset orbits, waiting to meet the returning bombers. Every connection, every refueling line, was timed to the second. The coordination between Air Force, Navy, and satellite networks worked flawlessly, a display of how integrated warfare has become in the 21st century. Experts later called the mission a textbook execution of American air dominance. It proved how stealth, speed, and synchronization could achieve total destruction without a single loss. Every phase, from target selection to strike confirmation, relied on data, not guesswork. When the Pentagon released limited details days later, one fact stood out: 5 targets, 27 munitions, 0 aircraft lost. The ratio spoke for itself. It showed that modern combat is not about firepower alone. It's about intelligence, technology, and control. The ability to strike first, strike fast, and vanish before the echo fades. The success of Operation Iron Dawn sent a message not just to Moscow, but to the entire world. In modern warfare, precision is power, and silence, the most dangerous weapon of all. By 06:30 a.m., the immediate part of the mission was clear. 5 Russian strongholds were destroyed. Satellite images and drone feeds showed massive craters. Buildings lay in ruins. Fires burned for hours. U.S. command counted the gear lost: armored vehicles, radar arrays, ammunition bunkers, communications hubs. The strike used 27 major munitions. Analysts estimate more than 300 Russian troops were inside those sites. Many did not survive. Casualty numbers were later revised as teams on the ground, and satellite analysts checked the wreckage. The U.S. reported no aircraft lost and no U.S. fatalities. Aircraft returned to base. Ships remained at sea. The mission time from first launch to bomber recovery was under 3 hours. That figure is rare for an action of this scale. It showed planning and execution worked as intended. Global reaction followed fast. Moscow called the strikes an act of aggression. Officials in Russia warned of consequences. State media ran repeated reports. NATO reacted differently. Allied capitals expressed concern over escalation, but praised the precision and the low civilian impact. The United Nations held an emergency session within 24 hours. Diplomats argued for calm. Some countries pushed for immediate sanctions. Markets reacted too. Oil prices jumped briefly. Stock indexes dipped on fears of wider conflict. Military analysts debated on TV and in papers. Some called it a necessary counter to a growing threat. Others warned the move could widen the war. On the ground, the strike changed military plans. Russian units near the border pulled back. Their forward push slowed and, in many sectors, stopped. Commanders reassessed supply lines and air defense postures. NATO increased reconnaissance flights and moved reinforcements to key positions. The Black Sea saw more naval activity. The U.S. also increased air patrols over Allied airspace. In short, the balance of power in that zone shifted. The damaged strongholds no longer threatened immediate Allied positions. That gave NATO breathing room. It also gave the U.S. a strategic edge. Politically, the strike sparked debate. In Washington, leaders defended the action as a targeted retaliation. They argued it was limited. They said it aimed to stop a threat, not start a new war. In Moscow, the government framed it as unacceptable aggression. Talks between the two sides stopped for a time. Back-channel diplomacy, however, continued. Quiet lines of communication stayed open to prevent mistakes. Intelligence services on both sides increased monitoring to avoid miscalculation. Civilian life near the strike zones faced hardship. Power and water lines were damaged in nearby towns. Aid groups reported displaced families. Humanitarian teams moved in where safe. The U.S. said it would support relief efforts where possible and monitor for civilian harm. Independent monitors later reported that civilian casualties were lower than feared, but infrastructure damage was significant. In short, the outcome was clear and mixed. Militarily, the U.S. achieved its goals. 5 hostile strongholds were neutralized. The immediate threat receded. Politically and globally, the strike raised tensions and forced new calculations. Economically, markets felt the shock. Humanitarian needs rose in the affected areas. The world had been shown a new fact. Modern air power can remove hardened positions quickly, but quick strikes carry long shadows. The strike solved an urgent danger. It also opened a new chapter of uncertainty. When the smoke cleared, the world faced a new reality. The strike had ended in minutes, but its meaning would last for years. 5 Russian strongholds were gone. The message was simple. American power could reach anywhere, at any time. Inside military circles, analysts called it a perfect operation. No U.S. lives lost, no aircraft shot down, every target destroyed with surgical accuracy. But even perfection brings questions. What does it mean when one nation can erase another's defenses before the sun rises? How do you balance strength with restraint in a world built on deterrence? War has changed. It's no longer about who has more troops or tanks. It's about who sees first, decides faster, and strikes without being seen. Operation Iron Dawn proved that. Technology, intelligence, and timing are now more powerful than numbers. The quiet hum of a stealth bomber can do more than an army on the ground. But power has a cost. The silence after the explosions was heavy. Civilians near the blast zones watched the horizon burn. Families were displaced. Communications went dark. Even in a clean strike, there are scars that statistics don't show. Behind every target hit, there are stories that vanish. For the United States, this operation reinforced its image of dominance. It reminded the world why precision air power remains its greatest strength. For Russia, it was a warning and a challenge. For the world, it was a sign that modern conflict is now measured in minutes, not months. In the halls of power, decisions are made in calm voices. But the results echo loud and far. This strike was one of those moments, quiet at the start, thunderous in the end. It was not just retaliation, it was a signal. A reminder that in warfare, silence can strike louder than sound. At dawn, 5 strongholds fell, and the balance of fear shifted once again. If you found this breakdown powerful, subscribe to stay informed on real military stories, global updates, and in-depth war analysis that helps you understand how the world's most advanced forces operate. Because the next dawn may already be in motion.